Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Just shut your mouth and stay out of men's business. My husband was assembling a sofa for his brother in our bedroom and had thrown my things out into the hallway. His men's business came to an end when my mother walked into the apartment. Carla first saw Pablo at her company's corporate event. He was setting up the sound equipment and joking endlessly with her colleagues. She thought at the time, what an outgoing guy, how easily he connects with people. After that, they exchanged phone numbers, went for walks along the promenade, and had coffee dates, at one of which a waiter accidentally spilled hot tea on her, and Pablo immediately took off his shirt and gave it to her, standing there in just a t-shirt. With a guy like this, you won't be left stranded, Carla thought then. They got married 6 months later, a modest wedding, just close family and friends. Carla's mother, Elena Moreno, a retired doctor, watched her new son-in-law with a slight squint but ultimately approved of her daughter's choice. "The main thing is that he respects you, the rest will follow," she said. Pablo made a good impression on his mother-in-law, polite, hardworking, and with a disarming smile. After the wedding, the young couple lived in a small rented one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. Carla worked as an accountant. Pablo picked up gigs at an event agency. They had to budget tightly, but it still never seemed to be enough. "Half of our salary goes to rent," Carla would sigh, sorting the household budget into envelopes. "It's okay, we'll get through it," Pablo would say, lightly touching her shoulder. "Look at Nicholas, he's juggling 2 loans and he's still alive." Carla didn't much like Nicholas, Pablo's older brother. He was loud, brash, and always borrowing money from Pablo, money he never paid back. "Family is sacred," Pablo would say, handing his brother his last bit of cash. The day Elena Moreno called and asked Carla to come over, Carla didn't expect anything special. Maybe another conversation about children, her mother regularly asked when they planned to make her a grandmother, or maybe just tea and pastries. "I've decided to move out to the countryside," Elena said, pouring tea. "I'm tired of the city bustle. I want peace and quiet, and a little vegetable garden. I bought a small house in Las Flores." "That's great, Mom," Carla said cautiously. "And what about your apartment? What about it?" Elena repeated, tapping her nail against the cup. "I'm leaving it to you. You need it more." Carla froze, the cup halfway to her mouth. Her mother's one-bedroom apartment, in a good neighborhood, renovated and fully furnished, was a real stroke of luck. "Mom, are you serious? What about?" "What do you mean, what about? I'm not an old wreck yet, handing out inheritance. We'll draw up a deed of gift, and you can live there in peace. Just respect my hard work and each other." When Carla told her husband the news, Pablo spun her around the room. "This is our big break. I could even switch to a more interesting job. Or we could start renovating." "Let's hold off on the renovations," Carla laughed. "And we still have to work anyway." A month later, they moved into her mother's apartment, a bright one-bedroom with high ceilings and old but solid renovations. At first, Pablo was attentive. He helped with cleaning and even did the dishes without reminders. Carla lovingly made the space their own. She hung her dresses neatly in the wardrobe, carefully arranged her cosmetics on the old vanity table that had once belonged to her grandmother. Elena Moreno would call from time to time to ask how they were settling in but rarely visited. "I don't want to intrude on your family life," she would say. With the move, changes didn't stop at their living situation. Elena used her connections to help Pablo land a position as a technical director at a major event planning company. His salary tripled, and real career prospects opened up. "See how well everything is falling into place," Carla would say in the evenings when they sat on their tiny balcony drinking wine. "Our own apartment, a good job." "Yeah, your mom really helped," Pablo nodded, but there was a strain in his voice. "Though it's a bit weird, using connections like that." "Why weird? You're a great professional." "Sure," he gave a dry chuckle, "but everyone there knows I'm Elena Moreno's son-in-law." The comment stung Carla, but she said nothing. Over time, she started to notice Pablo pulling away. He stayed late at work more often and shared less about his day. When he did come home, he spent more and more time glued to his phone. By the end of the first year in the new apartment, their shared dinners had become rare. Pablo was always busy with important meetings or corporate events. And he started talking about his brother more often. "Can you believe it? Nicholas and his wife split up," he said one evening. "Sorry to hear that," Carla replied without much enthusiasm as she stirred pasta sauce. "And he lost his job too," Pablo added, watching her reaction closely. "So what now?" "Well, he's looking for a new one. Just a rough patch, you know." There was a pleading look in Pablo's eyes that made Carla tense up. "I hope he pulls through," she said flatly. Over the next few weeks, Pablo mentioned his brother more and more. Nicholas would call several times a day. Sometimes, Pablo would go to the kitchen to take the calls in private. Carla tried to ignore it, but a sense of unease kept growing inside her. One Saturday morning, as they were having breakfast, Pablo casually said, "You know, we actually have plenty of space. Big bedroom, living room. What are you getting at?" Carla set down her fork. "Well, Nicholas doesn't have anywhere to stay right now. Maybe he could live with us for a while. Just a couple of weeks, until he finds a job and a new place. We have a one-bedroom apartment, Pablo. Where would he sleep? We could get a sofa bed for the living room. My mom has an old one, sturdy but comfortable." Carla felt everything inside her tighten. "This isn't a living room, Pablo. It's our only room besides the kitchen." "So what's the difference?" "It's both a bedroom and a living room," he waved dismissively. "I don't want your brother living with us," Carla said firmly. "He has a mother, after all. Mom lives in another city, you know that." Pablo's face darkened. "I thought you'd understand. He's my family. And what about me? I'm your family too. And, for the record, this is my apartment." That argument triggered something. Pablo abruptly stood up from the table. "Oh, your apartment? Of course, how could I forget? Everything here is yours, and I'm just an accessory to the furniture." He slammed the door so hard that a framed photo fell from the shelf, their wedding picture. The glass cracked, right between the figures of the bride and groom. After that argument, Pablo seemed to quiet down. He didn't bring up his brother again, acted thoughtful, and even started a little tradition of bringing Carla her favorite pastries every Friday. She almost believed the issue was closed. But then, one Wednesday, after an important meeting at work fell through, Carla decided to leave early. Unlocking the door with her key, she heard noises and male voices inside the apartment. Her heart skipped a beat. Stepping inside, she froze. The hallway, usually spotless, looked like a battlefield. A coat that she normally hung neatly by the door was lying on the floor. Her clothes had been pulled out of the wardrobe. Dresses, blouses, and skirts that had once hung so carefully were now heaped carelessly in the hallway, like discarded trash. Her favorite black dress, bought with her first paycheck, was draped lifelessly over the shoe cabinet. "What to do?" Carla breathed, stepping further inside. In their one and only room, their bedroom and living room in one, a shocking scene awaited her. In the middle of the room stood an enormous, battered old sofa bed, a shapeless mass of worn-out, dirt-brown velvet with sagging seats and exposed springs. Standing beside it, red-faced and sweaty, was Pablo. Across from him stood his brother Nicholas, a big man with a receding hairline and a 3-day stubble. "Carla?" Pablo said in surprise, clearly not expecting to see his wife so early. "What are you doing home?" Carla didn't answer. Her gaze landed on the vanity table, a delicate piece she had inherited from her grandmother. All her cosmetics, perfumes, and jewelry boxes had been swept into a cardboard shoebox, now sitting on the floor. In their place loomed a large men's suitcase. "What's going on here?" Carla's voice came out lower and raspier than she expected. "What does it look like?" Nicholas smirked. "Getting settled in. Didn't Pablo tell you?" The brothers exchanged glances. Pablo gave a nervous shrug. "I was just about to tell you. Nicholas has nowhere else to go. He'll stay with us for a bit, until he gets back on his feet. You know I'm against this, Carla said quietly but firmly. We discussed it. Come on, lighten up, Nicholas said good-naturedly, plopping onto the sofa and stretching out his legs. I'll hardly be noticeable. It's just a third person. What? You've never lived in a shared apartment? I don't want him living here, Carla said, looking straight at her husband and ignoring Nicholas. This is my apartment. And I didn't give permission. Here we go again, Pablo rolled his eyes. Your apartment, your rules, right? What about me? Don't I get a say? We're husband and wife, we live here together. I'm not against having your friends or your brother over as guests, but living here. Exactly, Pablo cut her off, his voice rising, we're husband and wife. And I have the right to decide who lives in our apartment. Nicholas watched the argument with obvious amusement, chuckling and shaking his head. Women, he said philosophically, always make a fuss at first, but they come around in the end. That phrase, spoken with such sneering condescension, pushed Carla over the edge. I'm not just some random woman, she said, her voice trembling. I'm the owner of this apartment. And I don't want you living here. Why are you both acting like my opinion doesn't matter? Here we go, Nicholas sighed and nodded at his brother. Go on, calm down your princess, or we'll be assembling this sofa till midnight. Pablo closed his eyes and took a deep breath, clearly trying to keep his cool. Carla, listen, he tried to take her hand, but she pulled away. Nicholas is in trouble. He has no place to live, no job. He needs help. Can't we just make a little space for him? You could have at least discussed it with me first, Carla said quietly, before throwing my things around and bringing in that awful sofa. Hey, that sofa's fine, Nicholas protested. I've been sleeping on it since I was 16, every time I visited Mom. I didn't throw anything away, Pablo continued defending himself. I just moved things around a bit. I was going to put everything back. After you set up the sofa? Carla crossed her arms over her chest. Pablo, we live in a one-bedroom apartment. There's simply no space for a third person. There's plenty of space, Nicholas snapped. People live 5 to a room in one bedrooms and survive. You, Carla, you're just spoiled in your little apartment. You want everything to go your way, like some royal highness. Nicholas, stay out of it, Pablo muttered, but without much conviction. Why should I? Nicholas kept going. A man just wants to help his brother, and she's throwing a fit. Is that how family's supposed to act? All talk about family values until it's time to prove it. Shut your mouth, Carla said sharply, staring straight at Nicholas. This is none of your business. It's between me and my husband. Whoa, Nicholas whistled, raising his eyebrows. Look at that temper. Bro, you're totally whipped by this fury, you know that? Carla turned her gaze to Pablo. She was waiting for him to stand up for her, to shut his brother down, to say something in her defense. But Pablo just gave an awkward smile, shrugged, and mumbled. You're kind of exaggerating, man. All right, stop, Carla raised her hand. Pablo, be honest. Do you really want Nicholas to live with us? Yes, Pablo said, unexpectedly firm. He's my brother. I'm not going to abandon him. And what about my opinion? Doesn't it matter? Of course it matters, Pablo raised his voice. But it's just temporary. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? Nicholas burst out laughing. Told you. Women always blow things out of proportion. Something flipped inside Carla. A wave of icy calm spread through her veins. She slowly looked around the trashed room, the scattered clothes, the ridiculous sofa, Nicholas's smug face, and Pablo's confused one. Fine, her voice was remarkably steady. I understand everything I need to. Pablo blinked in confusion. You mean, you agree? No, Carla shook her head. But now I see what matters more to you, my feelings or your brother's whims. What whims? Pablo objected. He has nowhere to go. He has a mother. He has friends. He has rental options. But you didn't even ask me before wrecking the place. Come on, don't be so dramatic. Pablo tried to put an arm around her shoulders, but Carla pulled away. It's just a little mess. We're helping someone in need. You know what? Carla headed decisively for her purse. I'm not going to argue with the two of you. Do whatever you want. That's more like it, Nicholas said cheerfully. Told you, Pablo, women always give in if you show some backbone. Carla took out her phone and silently dialed a number. The brothers exchanged a glance. Who are you calling? Pablo frowned. My mom, Carla said calmly. Pablo went pale. Why drag her into this? We can sort this out ourselves. Sorry, but it seems we can't, Carla said, holding the phone to her ear. I need help. Pablo lunged toward her. Give me the phone. Don't bother your mom over nothing. This isn't nothing, Pablo. Carla stepped back toward the door. You made it clear you don't respect me or my property. Women. Nicholas snorted again. Always hiding behind mommy when they run out of arguments. Come on, Pablo, show her who's boss around here. Something dark flashed in Pablo's eyes. He strode toward Carla and grabbed her roughly by the arm. Give me the phone. And shut up. Stay out of men's business. Carla froze, unable to believe her ears. In 5 years of marriage, Pablo had never said anything like that to her, let alone grabbed her by the arm. On the other end of the line, Elena Moreno's voice came through. Carla? What's wrong? Carla's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. Mom, can you come over? It's urgent. I'm on my way. Her mother's voice was calm, without a trace of surprise or questions. What's going on? Pablo decided to move his brother into our apartment. Without my consent. I see, Elena replied dryly. I'll be there in an hour. Pablo released Carla's arm and stepped back. What was that for? He asked, his voice full of hurt. What are you trying to achieve? Justice, Carla replied simply. Oh, scary, Nicholas laughed. Mother-in-law's coming. What's she gonna do? Shake her finger at us? Pablo didn't join in his brother's bravado. He had known Elena Moreno for years and, unlike Nicholas, he understood this wasn't going to end easily. The next hour passed in tense silence. Nicholas kept fussing with the sofa, pointedly ignoring Carla. Pablo hovered between them, trying to calm his wife and help his brother. Carla sat in a chair by the window, staring at a single spot without saying a word. When the doorbell rang, all three of them flinched. It's open, Carla called. Elena Moreno entered, a small, slender woman with a military bearing. Despite her short stature, she seemed to fill the entire entryway with her presence. Surveying the mess in the hallway, she silently walked into the room and stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. Her gaze swept over the dismantled sofa, the flushed men, and her daughter sitting motionless in the chair. A heavy silence hung in the air. Well, Elena Moreno finally said, it's been 53 minutes since Carla called. Pablo, explain what's going on here. Pablo swallowed nervously. Behind him, Nicholas flashed him a thumbs up, as if encouraging him, but it only made Pablo's mood worse. Elena Moreno, he began, trying to sound confident, Nicholas and I decided he should stay with us for a while, until he finds a job, and... Nicholas and you decided? Elena cut him off, raising an eyebrow. And what did Carla decide? I'm against it, Carla said quietly but firmly. But Pablo told me this was men's business and that I should keep my mouth shut. A shadow crossed Elena Moreno's face. Is that so? She crossed her arms over her chest. Men's business, huh? I see. Nicholas stepped forward. Elena Moreno, don't interfere. We'll sort this out ourselves. Interfere, the elderly woman asked with a dangerously calm smile. Exactly whose business am I not supposed to interfere with? There was a pause. Pablo cracked first. Elena Moreno, Nicholas is in a tough spot. He's my brother. I have to help him. Admirable, his mother-in-law nodded. But why does helping him mean my daughter's belongings are scattered on the floor and her feelings trampled? I was going to clean everything up afterward, Pablo blurted. After you moved your brother into my daughter's apartment without her consent? It's their shared apartment, Nicholas interjected. Their husband and wife. Elena Moreno turned to him slowly. First of all, young man, this is not your apartment. It's my daughter's apartment, a gift from me. I worked for 30 years to buy it. And I don't recall your name being mentioned in the deed. Nicholas opened his mouth but found no words. Secondly, Elena continued, turning her gaze to Pablo, I helped you get your job, Pablo. Do you remember that? I put in a word with Maximo Rodriguez, and you got a position you could only dream of. Pablo turned even paler. That's not fair, he muttered. You're using your influence to pressure me. Unfair? Elena's voice remained even, but a steel edge crept in. You know what's unfair? Disrespecting your wife. Being rude. Forcing your decisions on her and ignoring her feelings. I just wanted to help my brother. Pablo almost shouted. Help him. Elena Moreno snapped. Rent him an apartment. Lend him some money. Find him a job. But not at the expense of my daughter's comfort and dignity. The room fell silent, broken only by the heavy breathing of the men. Nicholas shifted awkwardly from foot to foot, clearly unsure what to do with himself. You have 15 minutes, Elena said calmly, glancing at her watch, to take apart that sofa and get it out of here. And if we refuse? Nicholas challenged. Elena Moreno smiled thinly. Then by tomorrow, Pablo will no longer have a job. One phone call to Maximo Rodriguez, and that's it. You wouldn't dare. Pablo exclaimed. Believe me, Pablo, I would. There's nothing more important to me than my daughter's happiness. The men exchanged glances, despair and helplessness reflected in their eyes. You realize this is blackmail, Pablo said quietly. No, Elena shook her head. It's called consequences. 14 minutes. The silence that filled the room felt almost tangible. Elena stood in the doorway, arms crossed, small but unyielding like a granite statue. Her presence charged the air like static electricity. 13 minutes, she reminded them, glancing again at her watch. Pablo and Nicholas exchanged bewildered looks. Nicholas's face was a mix of outrage and fear, while Pablo looked like he had been punched in the gut. Fine, Pablo was the first to give in, rubbing his forehead. Nicholas, let's take it apart. Are you serious? Nicholas protested. You're just giving up like that? What do you suggest? Pablo snapped. Let them fire me tomorrow? Nicholas snorted but eventually bent over the sofa. The men began unscrewing the bolts that held the bulky structure together. They worked in silence, exchanging only the occasional terse word. Carla watched from her chair, feeling a strange numbness. Elena Moreno sat down on the edge of the desk chair, her eyes never leaving the men. Her thin fingers tapped rhythmically on the armrest, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like an invisible metronome. 11 minutes, she said evenly. Yeah, we get it, Nicholas snapped. Stop counting down. I'm just reminding you that time is passing, Elena replied calmly. And my conditions stand. Nicholas muttered something under his breath, not quite audible. Pablo shot him a warning look. Elena got up and approached her daughter's scattered clothes. Don't touch, she said sharply when Pablo reached out to help. You deal with the sofa. Carla and I will handle her things. She carefully picked up Carla's black dress, straightened it, and hung it neatly on a hanger. Remember when we picked this out? She asked Carla softly, smoothing the fabric. You tried on dozens of dresses but chose this one. I remember, Carla said with a faint smile. I spent my first paycheck on it. It was worth it, Elena nodded. It suits you perfectly. Their quiet conversation about the dress, held in soft voices amid the tense atmosphere, sounded almost surreal. Nicholas rolled his eyes but stayed silent when he saw the understanding glances exchanged between mother and daughter. 9 minutes, Elena noted as she hung the dress back in the wardrobe. Yeah, we know. Nicholas barked, wrenching a bolt loose with unnecessary force. You're getting on my nerves. Nicholas, don't push it, Pablo muttered through gritted teeth. Elena remained unflappable, steadily returning Carla's clothes to their place. Her movements were precise and efficient, the result of her military training. Pablo, she said suddenly, addressing her son-in-law, do you know how much this apartment is worth at today's prices? Pablo froze with the wrench in his hand. No. I haven't thought about it. She calmly stated the value. And that's a conservative estimate, she added. Good neighborhood, great transport, a park nearby. Pablo swallowed hard. What's your point? My point is, Elena said, hanging another blouse in the wardrobe, I didn't just give my daughter a roof over her head. I gave her financial stability, her security, her future. I gave her the most valuable thing I had. I understand, but... No, you don't, Elena interrupted gently. If you did, you wouldn't let your brother take over her apartment and scatter her belongings. Nicholas scoffed. Oh please, it's just stuff. It's not like we threw it out or ruined anything. Elena slowly turned to him. It's not about the stuff, young man. It's about respect. And what about respect for family ties? Nicholas retorted. A brother should help a brother. Of course, Elena Moreno nodded. But not at the expense of a third party, especially the woman you promised to love and protect. Pablo flushed deeply. He set down the wrench and rubbed the back of his neck. Elena Moreno, he began in a conciliatory tone, I admit I didn't handle this the right way. But I really just wanted to help Nicholas. He's my brother, you understand? I understand, his mother-in-law nodded. I have a younger sister too. But that doesn't give me the right to take over someone else's property and ignore the feelings of my loved ones. 7 minutes, Carla said quietly, glancing at her watch. The men worked faster. The sofa was already half dismantled, the construction from the 70s proved surprisingly complicated. Sweat was streaming down Pablo's face, and Nicholas was breathing heavily as he struggled with rusted bolts. Darling, could you help me with your cosmetics? Elena Moreno asked, pointing to the cardboard box on the floor. Carla nodded and knelt beside it. Mother and daughter silently began restoring the perfumes, creams, and jewelry boxes to the vanity table. Their calm, measured movements contrasted sharply with the frantic bustle of the men. These perfumes, Pablo gave them to you for your anniversary? Elena asked, pointing to a delicate bottle. Yes, for our third, Carla nodded. I had been dreaming about them for a long time. Good taste, Elena noted approvingly. Pablo can be thoughtful when he wants to be. Pablo threw a brief glance at them but said nothing, concentrating on the sofa. 5 minutes, Elena said. Damn it, Nicholas cursed as the wrench slipped and he banged his finger. Pablo, this junk's all rusted through. Keep it down, Pablo hissed. Let's just finish this. Elena Moreno and Carla finished with the cosmetics and moved on to sorting the clothes in the hallway. Elena kept whispering brief comments to her daughter, who responded with faint smiles. Carla, Pablo suddenly called out, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean to hurt you. Carla looked up at him. For a moment, she thought she saw genuine remorse in his eyes. Apologies are nice, she replied evenly, but they don't undo what you did. I know, Pablo sighed. But I honestly didn't think you'd be this upset. Seriously? Carla raised an eyebrow. You tossed my things out, dragged in that hideous sofa, and were about to move your brother into our only room, and you didn't think I'd be upset? Pablo lowered his head in shame. Forget them, Pablo, Nicholas butted in. Women always blow things out of proportion. Today it's a tantrum, tomorrow she'll be all sweet. Nicholas, Elena Moreno's voice was unexpectedly sharp. I strongly suggest you watch your language in my daughter's presence. Or what? Nicholas sneered. You'll get me fired too? Too late, I'm already out of a job, in case you didn't know. No, Elena replied calmly. But I can call your mother. If I remember correctly, Tamara Vargas is a woman of strict principles. Nicholas paled. No need to drag Mom into this. Then behave properly, Elena said crisply. And hurry up. 3 minutes. The men doubled their efforts. The sofa was almost dismantled, just a few more bolts, and they could separate the seat from the armrests. Where do you work now, Elena Moreno? Nicholas asked suddenly. I'm a retired doctor, she replied. Currently consulting for a clinic management board. And what does that have to do with Pablo's job? Nicholas pressed. How can you get him fired? Maximo Rodriguez, the director of Pablo's company, is an old friend and former patient of mine, she said simply. I saved his life once in Colombia. We're still in touch. Nicholas let out a low whistle. Some connections. Connections are earned, Elena shrugged. 1 minute. Pablo loosened the final bolt, and the sofa collapsed into its separate parts. Done, he said, wiping his sweaty forehead. Where should we put it now? Back where you brought it from, Elena replied. I assume you have a car? I don't have a car, Nicholas muttered. We took a cab. Then call a cab, Elena shrugged. Or a moving van, more likely. That's going to cost a fortune, Nicholas grumbled. That's not my problem, Elena Moreno said sharply. You brought the sofa here, you can take it out. Pablo pulled out his phone and started scrolling through his contacts. I know a guy with a truck, he muttered. Maybe he can help. Perfect, Elena nodded. And while you're waiting, you can carry the sofa parts down to the first floor. From the 6th to the 1st? Nicholas protested. That junk is heavy. The elevator works, Elena shrugged. Besides, if I remember correctly, you insisted this was men's business. Pablo shot his mother-in-law a look full of powerless rage but said nothing. Instead, he bent down and picked up an armrest. Come on, Nicholas. Let's get it all downstairs. The next 20 minutes were spent hauling the heavy parts of the sofa to the building's entrance. Pablo and Nicholas dragged the pieces, the elevator groaned under the weight, and curious neighbors peeked out from their doors. Elena Moreno watched the process from the doorway while Carla finished cleaning up the room. You know, Elena said quietly, turning to her daughter, my father, your grandfather, used to say, self-respect can't be bought, but it's very easy to lose. Why are you telling me this, Mom? Carla was picking up small items that had fallen from the clothing pockets. Because your husband lost his self-respect today, Elena sighed. And that's bad for both of you. He chose his brother over me, Carla replied softly. That was his choice. Yes, Elena nodded. But the question is whether you're ready to accept the consequences of that choice. Carla continued cleaning in silence. Her face was calm, but her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Finally, the doorbell rang. A man in work clothes stood at the door. Victor, he introduced himself. Pablo called, said you needed a sofa moved. Yes, thank you for coming so quickly, Elena said. The pieces are already downstairs. Victor nodded and left. A few minutes later, Pablo and Nicholas returned, sweaty and red-faced. It's done, Pablo panted. Victor's taking the sofa to Mom's place. Excellent, Elena nodded. Then the incident is resolved. Great, Pablo forced a smile. Nicholas and I will grab a bite at a cafe and come back later to discuss everything. Okay? Elena exchanged a look with her daughter. Carla gave a barely noticeable shake of her head. No, Pablo, Elena said gently but firmly. I don't think that's a good idea. What do you mean? Pablo frowned. We've dealt with the sofa issue. We have, Elena agreed. But not the issue of trust and respect. I apologized, Pablo exclaimed. What more do you want? More than just an apology, Carla said, speaking for the first time in a while. I need time, Pablo. Time to think about whether we can continue living together. A heavy silence fell. Pablo's face twisted in shock and hurt. You're serious? Over some stupid sofa? No, Pablo, Carla answered wearily. Not over the sofa. Over your attitude. Over the fact that you chose your brother over me. Over shut your mouth and stay out of men's business. You're exaggerating, Pablo waved his arms. I just lost my temper. Maybe, Carla shrugged. But I need time to understand how seriously I should take it. Pablo glanced from his wife to his mother-in-law, seeking support, but Elena only shook her head. She's right, Pablo. You both need time. But where am I supposed to go? Pablo asked helplessly. You were planning to help your brother, Carla spread her hands. Go ahead and help him. Live together. Think about the future. We'll be staying at Mom's place, Nicholas cut in. A crappy two-bedroom on the outskirts. It's not living. Then you'll both have plenty to think about, Elena said calmly. And now, if you don't mind, Carla and I would like to be alone. Pablo stood there, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. His shoulders sagged, and despair flickered in his eyes. Carla, please, he took a step toward her. Let's talk this through. I know I was wrong. Then respect my decision, Carla said quietly. I need time, Pablo. Please go. Nicholas shifted impatiently by the door. Pablo, come on, don't be a kid. Let's go. So what if a woman got upset? Shut up, Pablo snapped suddenly, turning sharply to his brother. This is all because of you. Because of me? Nicholas protested. I asked for help, not for you to get divorced. No one's getting divorced, yet, Elena Moreno said tiredly. Carla's just asking for time. If you don't give it to her, then we'll start talking about divorce. Pablo slowly nodded. His face took on the look of someone who had only just realized how serious the situation was. Fine, he raised his hands in surrender. Time it is. He walked to the closet in the hallway, pulled out a backpack, and stuffed a few things into it, a toothbrush, a razor. Then he turned to Carla. I'll call you tomorrow. Is that okay? Carla gave a short nod. Pablo offered an uncertain smile, then turned and headed for the door. Nicholas was already impatiently shifting from foot to foot. Finally, he muttered, Let's go before Mom's neighbor hogs the bathroom. Pablo gave Carla one last long look, filled with hurt, regret, and confusion, and then followed his brother out. The door closed with a dull click, and the apartment fell silent. Elena Moreno walked over to Carla and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Carla gave a shuddering sigh but held it together. Everything will be all right, Elena said softly. Do you really think so? Carla lifted her tear-filled eyes to her mother. I know it, Elena said firmly. Because you're strong. And today you proved it. They stood in the middle of the room, which just an hour ago had been a battlefield but now felt unexpectedly empty and foreign. Carla silently stared at the door that had closed behind her husband, trying to figure out whether she felt relief or emptiness. You know what I'm thinking about? Elena said, stroking her daughter's hair. What? That we could use some tea with a splash of brandy, she smiled. And a long talk. The kind only a mother and daughter can have. Carla gave a faint smile and nodded. For the first time that crazy day, she felt something close to calm. Maybe her life had just taken an unexpected turn. But at least she wasn't standing at that crossroads alone. For 3 days, Carla moved through a haze. She slept fitfully, waking at every little noise. She tossed and turned in bed, listening to the empty apartment. She put her phone on silent mode. She didn't want to see the endless messages from Pablo that started coming the next day. "I'm sorry, let's talk. I understand now," words that meant nothing. Or meant far too little. On the fourth day, she took a day off and went to the Registro Civil. Filing for divorce turned out to be surprisingly simple. No questions, no judgmental stares. Just a standard form and a list of necessary documents. You'll need your marriage certificate, both spouses' IDs, and a receipt for the court fee, the clerk recited mechanically. If you have children, their birth certificates too. Do you have children? No, Carla shook her head. No children. That makes things easier, the woman nodded. With no property disputes, the process will take about a month. You can file jointly or separately. Carla nodded, clutching the form in her hands. Jointly or separately, as if she had a choice that didn't really exist. She had already made her decision. When she got home, her phone showed 7 missed calls from Pablo and 1 voice message. Her finger hovered over the play button. Should she listen? What could he possibly say that she didn't already know? Carla, Pablo's voice sounded unusually sober and serious, without its usual pleading tone. I know I messed up. I don't even know why I acted the way I did. Maybe because it's always been easier to give in to Nicholas than to fight with him. He's my older brother, you know? I've been used to following him since I was a kid. But that's no excuse. I shouldn't have put him above you. And I definitely shouldn't have told you to shut up. I'm sorry. I'll wait as long as it takes. Until you're ready to talk. Carla deleted the message without listening to the end. Words. Just words. She had seen it many times, Pablo giving in to his brother. But she never thought it would go this far. That he would choose his brother over his wife. That evening, her mother called. How are you, sweetheart? Elena's voice was calm and steady. I'm okay, Carla sighed. I went to the Registro Civil and picked up the divorce form. There was a pause. Are you sure? Her mother asked gently. Maybe you should wait. Think it over. What's there to think about? Carla shrugged, even though her mother couldn't see her. He made his choice. People make mistakes, Elena said softly. We all do, and sometimes we deserve a second chance. You're the one who always told me, self-respect can't be bought, but it's easy to lose, Carla reminded her. If I forgive him now, what's next? He'll think it's okay to walk all over me. That his brother will always matter more than me. Maybe it was just a bad day, Elena Moreno suggested. We all say things we regret later. Mom, Carla felt a lump rising in her throat. You heard what he said yourself, shut up and stay out of men's business. It wasn't just his bad day. It was my nightmare. Elena Moreno sighed heavily. I understand, sweetheart. I just don't want you to regret anything later. I don't regret it, Carla said firmly. It's the right decision. After talking to her mother, Carla sat in the kitchen for a long time, staring out at the evening city. The lights in the windows opposite, the silhouettes of people going about their lives, the cars passing by, it all seemed distant and unreal. Her life had come to a halt 4 days ago when she opened her apartment door and saw the mess. A week later, Pablo's former colleague, Marina, called. Hi, Carla. Her voice sounded awkward. Do you know what's going on with Pablo? He hasn't been showing up at work for days, and he's not answering his phone. We've separated, Carla answered briefly. I don't know where he is or what he's doing. Oh, sorry, Marina said, embarrassed. It's just that Maximo Rodriguez is furious. He said if Pablo doesn't show up tomorrow, he's fired. Carla felt a pang of guilt. She had promised herself not to interfere, but she couldn't let Pablo lose his job because of their breakup. She dialed his number but got his voicemail. Pablo, it's Carla, she said after the beep. They called from work. If you don't show up tomorrow, you'll be fired. Just think about it. He didn't call back. The next day, Marina confirmed that Pablo hadn't shown up. Maximo Rodriguez was furious, terminated his contract, and ordered him to clear out his office by the end of the week. Such a waste, Marina sighed. Everything was going so well for him. His career was taking off, and everyone adored you. What happened, Carla? Carla didn't go into details. She simply said they had different views on life. But inside, something twisted painfully. Everything was unraveling too fast. Pablo had lost her, and now he'd lost his job. Was he really sinking that deeply into despair? The answer came 3 days later, when someone rang the doorbell. Pablo stood at the door, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes, wearing a wrinkled shirt. "Hi," his voice was hoarse. "Sorry for dropping by unannounced. I came to get the rest of my things." Carla silently stepped aside to let him in. He smelled faintly of alcohol, but he was sober, his eyes were clear, his movements steady. "Thanks for calling about the job," he said as he walked into the room. "Though it didn't help." "I heard," Carla nodded. "I'm sorry." Pablo smirked. "No need. It was my fault." He started gathering his things, a winter coat from the closet, books from the shelf, some documents from the desk drawer. Carla leaned against the doorframe, watching him. "How are you?" she asked finally. "I'm fine," Pablo shrugged. "Living with Mom, with Nicholas. It's cramped, but bearable." "And work?" "I got a job as a loader at a hardware store. Not exactly an IT director, but it pays the bills." Something about his too cheerful tone made Carla frown. "And how is it?" "Great," Pablo smiled too broadly. "Physical labor in the fresh air, no responsibility. My back's killing me, but it's nothing." He was stuffing his things into his backpack with such force it was as if he was trying to cram his whole past life inside. "And Nicholas? Did he find a job?" Carla asked, trying to sound neutral. "Nicholas?" Pablo snorted. "He's doing just fine. Leeching off Mom, binge-watching TV shows, complaining about life. Says he's planning to start a business, just can't decide what kind." There was a trace of bitterness in his voice that made Carla's heart ache. Something had clearly changed between the brothers. "Carla," Pablo suddenly stopped and looked at her. "I understand about the divorce. It's the right thing. I screwed up and I deserve it. But, could we at least stay friends?" Carla looked at his gaunt face, at the pain in his eyes, and didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to scream, "No. You destroyed this yourself." Another part of her, the part that still remembered the good times, wanted to reach out, to hug him, to comfort him. "I don't know, Pablo," she said honestly. "I don't know yet." He nodded, as if he had expected that answer, and went back to packing his things. When the backpack was full, he zipped it up and slung it over his shoulder. "Well, that's everything," he said, casting a last glance around the room, as if saying goodbye to it. "Take care of yourself, Carla." She walked him to the door. At the threshold, he turned around, as if wanting to say something else, but then just gave a small nod and left. The door closed with a soft click, and Carla felt a strange sense of relief, as if the last thread tying them together had finally snapped. On the day of the divorce, it was raining. Carla sat in the waiting area of the Registro Civil, clutching a folder of documents, and watched the raindrops trickling down the window. Pablo was late, and she was starting to get nervous. What if he changed his mind? Decided to contest the divorce? Then it would have to go through court, dragging on for months. But he arrived, exactly on time, right to the minute. In an old suit that hung loose on him now, with neatly combed hair. She hadn't seen him in a month, and he looked like he had aged several years. "Hi," he said, sitting down next to her, leaving an empty chair between them. "Been waiting long?" "About 20 minutes, Carla shrugged. "I wanted to be sure I wasn't late." They sat in silence, watching people pass by. A young couple in wedding attire walked toward the door of the adjacent hall. Today was a day for marriage registrations too. The girl nervously adjusted her veil. The guy held her hand tightly. Carla felt a strange mix of envy and pity. "We were like that once," Pablo said quietly, following her gaze. "Remember?" "I remember," Carla nodded. "I was so happy that day." Pablo stared into the distance as if he could see their past there. "I thought we had our whole lives ahead of us." "Vega couple," a voice called from the registration hall. "Please come in." They stood up at the same time. Pablo instinctively reached out to help Carla with her coat, but then pulled his hand back as if burned. "Sorry," he mumbled. The divorce procedure was absurdly quick and simple: questions, signatures, stamps. "Do you consider reconciliation impossible?" A nod, another signature. "Your marriage is hereby dissolved." The whole process took less than 10 minutes, a ridiculous amount of time to end 5 years of life together. On the steps of the Registro Civil, Pablo paused. The rain had stopped, and the puddles reflected a clear blue sky. "Well," he shifted awkwardly from foot to foot, "that's it." "That's it," Carla echoed. "Can I give you a lift somewhere?" "I'm using a colleague's car." "No, thanks," Carla shook her head. "I'll walk." Pablo nodded, understanding that this wasn't just the end of the conversation, but of everything else too. "Take care of yourself, Carla," he said, stepping toward her, as if to give her a goodbye hug, but stopped himself. "And be happy. You deserve it." He walked away without looking back. Carla watched him until his figure dissolved into the crowd. A strange mixture of emptiness and freedom flooded her. She was truly alone now, for the first time in years. And the thought no longer scared her. That weekend, Carla decided to refresh the apartment. She rearranged the furniture, threw out old things, and bought new curtains, light, translucent, a pale turquoise color. They filled the room with a feeling of fresh sea breeze. She gave the old vanity table to the neighbor upstairs, whom she sometimes exchanged small talk with in the elevator. In its place, she bought a new one, elegant, with a full-length mirror and plenty of drawers, the kind she had always dreamed of but never dared to buy. "The apartment looks transformed," Elena Moreno said approvingly when she came over for tea on Saturday evening. "At last, it's fully yours." They drank tea in the small kitchen, and Carla talked about her plans, professional development courses, a possible promotion at work, the trip she had long postponed. "And Pablo? How's he?" Elena asked suddenly. "I don't know," Carla shrugged. "We don't keep in touch." "Something in Maximo Rodriguez softened when I told him your story," Elena said thoughtfully. "He promised to consider reinstating Pablo." "Mom," Carla protested. "Why are you interfering?" "I'm not interfering," Elena replied calmly. "I just think it's unfair that Pablo lost his job because of his brother's actions. Yes, he let himself get pulled into the situation. But the punishment should match the wrongdoing." Carla shook her head but said nothing. Something in her mother's words struck a chord. Did Pablo's punishment, losing his family, his job, his self-respect, really match his mistake? "Marina said he's working as a loader now," Carla said quietly. "Back to physical labor." "It's good for character," Elena Moreno nodded. "But it's a pity about his career. He was a good specialist." They both fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Dusk was gathering outside, and the city lights were growing brighter. "Do you remember that day?" Carla asked suddenly. "When you came and threw them out along with the sofa?" Elena Moreno smiled. "Of course. How could I forget?" "It was an important lesson for me," Carla said seriously. "You taught me not to let anyone walk all over me. Not even the people closest to me. Not even my own husband." "It's an important skill," Elena nodded. "But it's equally important to know how to forgive. Not always, and not everyone, of course. But sometimes, people deserve a second chance." "Don't tell me you're on Pablo's side," Carla raised an eyebrow. "I'm always on your side," Elena said gently. "But sometimes people make mistakes, and sometimes they truly change." "Pablo won't change," Carla shook her head. He'll always bend under pressure. Under his brother, under circumstances, under anyone. Maybe, Elena agreed. Or maybe this experience made him grow up. Who knows? Carla didn't answer, but her mother's words stayed with her. Later that evening, after Elena had left, she stood by the window, looking out over the city and thinking about Pablo. Where is he now? How is he handling his new life? Has he changed, as Mom suggested? These thoughts were unwelcome guests, and Carla firmly pushed them away. She had her own life now, a new life with no room for Pablo or his brother. A month later, coming back from work, Carla saw a familiar figure near her building. Pablo was standing, leaning against a tree, looking up at her windows. In his hands was a bouquet of simple wildflowers, not roses or lilies like he used to give on anniversaries. Carla could have turned around, taken a different route to avoid the encounter. But instead, she straightened her back and walked directly toward the entrance. "Hi," Pablo straightened up when he saw her. "I didn't know if you'd be home." "Hi," Carla stopped a few steps away. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to see you," he said, holding out the bouquet. "And to say goodbye properly." "Goodbye?" Carla frowned, automatically taking the flowers. "Yes," Pablo nodded. "I'm leaving. To Medellin. I found a job there with an IT company." "Congratulations," Carla said sincerely. "That's great." "Thanks," he shifted awkwardly. "Maximo Rodriguez gave me a recommendation letter. Said I was a good specialist who just got caught in a bad situation." "I'm happy for you," Carla said, not knowing what else to say. "And Nicholas?" Pablo smirked. "Nicholas is staying with Mom. He's fine there." "Did you two have a falling out?" Carla couldn't hide her surprise. "Not exactly," Pablo shrugged. "I just finally realized I'm not obligated to carry him on my back for the rest of my life. That I can love my brother without letting him ruin my life." "I see," Carla felt a strange sense of satisfaction. "And when are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning," Pablo glanced at his watch. "The bus is at 9:20. They stood in silence, unsure what else to say. So many words had been spoken over the years of their marriage, and so many more left unsaid. "Well, good luck," Carla finally said. "I hope everything works out for you in Medellin." "Thank you," Pablo smiled, that genuine smile that had once made her heart race. "You look happy, Carla. That's what matters." She hesitated. "Yes, I guess I am. In my own way." He nodded, as if he had gotten the answer to a question he hadn't dared to ask, and took a step back. "Then I'll go. Still lots to do before the trip." Of course, Carla hugged the bouquet to her chest. "Thank you for the flowers." Pablo waved and walked away without looking back. Carla watched him until he disappeared into the crowd, feeling a strange lightness, as if a final burden had fallen from her shoulders. She was free now, not just legally, but emotionally. Back in her apartment, she placed the flowers in a vase and walked over to her new vanity. In the mirror, a different Carla looked back at her, confident, calm, a little older. A woman who knew her own worth and wouldn't let anyone, even the closest ones, dictate how she should live. She smiled at her reflection. A new life was just beginning, and there was no place in it for Pablo or his brother. Only for herself and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. The following Saturday, Elena Moreno came over to her daughters for tea. They sat at the table as Carla told her about meeting Pablo and his departure to Medellin. "You know what's the strangest thing?" Carla said thoughtfully, stirring her tea. "I'm happy for him. Truly happy. It's like he's finally grown up. Sometimes people need to lose something important to understand its value," Elena nodded. "And sometimes it changes them for the better." "But it's already too late," Carla added quietly. "For the two of you, perhaps," Elena agreed. "But not for him. And not for you." They sat by the window, watching as the last rays of sunlight turned the rooftops a golden color. The apartment smelled of freshly brewed tea and wildflowers, which still stood in a vase. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart," Elena said suddenly, covering Carla's hand with her own. "You've become a strong woman, exactly the kind of woman I always hoped you would be." Carla smiled, feeling tears well up in her eyes, not bitter tears, but light, cleansing ones. "Thank you, Mom," she said softly. "For everything. For the apartment, for your support, and for teaching me not to let anyone walk all over me, not even my own husband." They both laughed, remembering the day when so-called men's business had been shattered by a woman's resolve, the day that had changed their lives forever. Outside, twilight deepened and the lights flickered on in the neighboring houses, where other lives unfolded with their own dramas, joys, and lessons. And in the small, cozy apartment, furnished to the taste of its owner, two women drank tea and talked about the future, a future that now belonged solely to them.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.